Go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cartoon Network Studios Portfolio Advice Series. This is Development 101 panel. This panel is about our CNS development executives, explaining what development is and what goes into a pitch packet when you're pitching a kids animation TV show. For legal reasons, we kindly request that you do not send us or any of our panelists your unsolicited pitches. This panel exists to inspire you and give you some tips for how to put together and prepare for your own pitch. Now, my name is Jessie Joanno, and I'm part of the talent development team at CNS. I'll be moderating this panel along with my team. If you have any questions for our executives, please click on the Q&A button below and write them in. We'll try to get to a few of those later on in the later half of this webinar. So without further ado, let's get started. Megan and Asal, please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your backgrounds.
Hi, thank you everybody for joining us and taking the time to learn about development. My name is Megan Bradley. I'm a director of development at Cartoon Network. Up until recently, I was the director of current series where I supported shows like We Bare Bears, We Bare Bears the movie, Clarence, Summer Camp Island, The Fungies, which is coming out soon. And I also help to hire writers on a lot of our shows. And I am the proud bunny mom of 2 bunnies. Fun fact.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, guys. I'm Asal Tanha. I am also a director of development. Some shows I've worked on include Craig of the Creek, Victor and Valentino, Apple and Onion, the newly released Tig and Seek, which you can find on HBO Max, and the upcoming show The Fungies, which releases on HBO Max on August 20th, which is super exciting. I've also developed a lot of our development shorts, including 3 that were released on YouTube a couple weeks ago. Definitely check them out. And though I am not a bunny mom, I am a horse girl, so we are definitely a group of animal lovers here in development.
Well, that's great. Thank you all for sharing that. I guess we'll get started. Our big number one question is, what is development? And I hear you guys have a presentation for us, so could you please share your knowledge?
We do, yes. Give me a second to pull it up. All right. So, sorry guys, just need to figure out how to make this full screen. View. All right, sorry about that.
It's all good.
Okay. So we're going to start with the basics. And one thing that Megan and I want to preface our talk with is just to let you know that everything we're going to say is Cartoon Network specific. So if you were to hear a talk on development from another network or studio like Nickelodeon or Disney, their talk might look a little bit different, but there are some universal truths, in development and in pitching a show. And so that's what we're going to try and boil down for you today. So what is development? Development is a department at Cartoon Network. And the job of the department is to find new shows and develop them into series. And the development department is made up of development executives like Megan and me, and we have a couple of others in our department as well. And we are typically the first point of entry for pitches. So if you have an idea for a show and you find Megan and me somehow, you are connected to us somehow, and you reach out, we will be the ones to hear your pitches. And so if we really like your idea, if we're excited about working with you as a creator, we will advocate to bring the show on into development and stay the advocate for you and your show the entire time that it's in development. So that could be all the way up until a series greenlight, and when it becomes a current series and goes to the current series executives, which is the department that Megan came from, or say we develop your show for a year or 2 years and we reach a certain point and it's just not working and we cease development. So for the entire life of development, your development project in development, we are your people. We like to consider ourselves a bridge between the creator and an audience. So you have a seed that needs to grow into a tree, basically. And we are the people to help, water your tree, take care of the soil, make sure that your show, your idea grows into the thing that it needs to become to reach an audience. And speaking of audience, we also like to consider ourselves the show's first audience. So we're not writers. Our job is not to come up with a bunch of story ideas or pitch ideas to you. Our job is to provide some objectivity that is very hard for creators to maintain often when they're working on their project. Because as we're going to talk about later, development projects are so personal to the people that make them. It's our job to help say, hey, this isn't clear. Hey, this isn't funny. Hey, we don't think kids are going to understand this. And to provide some of that objectivity and that feedback that an audience or anyone else going into the show without knowing you would point out.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about creating a pitch, which we have broken down into 3 steps, and we'll go into a bit more detail on each of these. So step 1 is where you form your idea, and that's where you brainstorm and come up with the foundation of your show, and then all the various elements. Step 2 being put your idea into a pitch format. So that's where you bring together all of that awesome info into a document that you can share with others and with executives like us. And then step 3, share your pitch with a development executive in a pitch meeting. All right, and now Estelle's going to talk a bit more in detail about step 1.
All right, so idea formation. So whether you already have an idea for a show, whether you want to come up with an idea for a show and you're wondering how to do that, there are a few key questions that you should ask yourself and keep in mind throughout this process. This is, ideation before you go to a pitch meeting and formulate your idea into a pitch to an executive. So the first question you should think about is, what do you want to say? So I think we're all here because we're fans of stories and storytelling, and we see stories as ways to connect with other people and bond with other people over shared human experience. And so your show is going to talk about what that experience is like in one way. So another way to think about what you want to say is your theme. What are you actually saying with your show? What does it actually mean, right? What do you want to connect to people through? And sometimes your theme won't just appear. Sometimes, it takes a little bit of work for you to kind of find it. Maybe you have an idea for a character, and then you have an idea for what this character does or what this character is going through, and your theme kind of comes from that. But it's really important that you have something to say, and what you want to say is clear to the executive that you're pitching to. So we also look for a really strong point of view, right? So your show, even if you're talking about some kind of universal human theme, it should feel talked about in a way that is very specific to you. What is your point of view? How is what you're saying, even if it's something that's maybe been explored before in a different show, very specific to who you are and your specific experience. You also want to consider your audience. Who is your audience? If this is a show for kids that you're working on, you want to make sure that you're creating it in a way that kids are going to understand. It's going to be relatable to them. And I think, you also want to consider your audience when you're pitching. If you are pitching to Cartoon Network and you know that Cartoon Network makes a certain kind of show, don't pitch us something that we would never put on the air. So I think it's important to keep all of these questions in mind, and they're really going to help you as you have that seed of an idea and you're helping it grow.
Awesome. So once you, kind of have all that good stuff cooking, then you will put it into a pitch document. And so the pitch document is kind of like a roadmap to your show and something that you'll leave behind for us executives to share with our team so they can hear from you in your voice. And a few suggestions of things that are helpful to include are a log line or an elevator pitch, it's also known as, which is really the main idea of your show in 1 or 2 sentences, so short and succinct. Then the format, which can be, if it's episodic or serialized, if there's a specific length of episodes. The target audience, which Estelle talked a bit about, that's, who is the show for more specifically. And, in the kids space, it can be, sometimes it includes more specific age ranges. A show summary, which is a more in-depth description than the log line, so including more details, more of the important elements in a broad sense. The main character visuals and descriptions, that's who's the main character that we're going to fall in love with and really care about along their journey. The secondary character visuals and descriptions, that's rounding out the cast. The setting or world of the show, which can be really expansive and magical or might be more grounded in real life. The visual tone or style goals, tone being if it's a specific genre or sense of humor, is there a mystery or adventure? The style being if there's a specific visual style or a particular medium you want to use. And then story ideas, which is one of my favorites, is a number of premises that would give examples of what we expect to see in each episode, or examples of how a series arc would play out over various episodes. And so that really, it doesn't need to be super long, but will give us an idea of what, if it's greenlit and goes to series, what each episode would look like. And now Estelle will talk about what makes a successful pitch and go into a bit more detail on each of these.
Thanks, Megan. All right, so what makes a good pitch? What makes a pitch that Cartoon Network is interested in? And, you're probably here because you're a fan of Cartoon Network. And I would say, if you look at this list of qualities that I'm going to go through and you think of the shows that are on the air, you can probably find that each of these qualities are in our shows. They're in all of our shows. So the first is the show needs to be broadly appealing. We don't make shows for 5 or 10 people. We make shows for millions of people around the world to watch. So it's important that your show has a broad appeal, is accessible to a lot of different kinds of people, but as I said before, feels really specific to who you are. It should feel different than any other kind of show that we've seen because it's personal to you and because you are a unique individual with a really unique way of seeing the world. And that's what we want to, that's what should be conveyed in your pitch, and that's what we're drawn to. Your show should be character driven. That means that the wants, needs, desires of your character, the mistakes they make, the ideas they have are driving the show forward. Your characters are active. The things that they choose to do is what makes an episode an episode. Comedy is really important. It's really important to Cartoon Network. It's really important to us as executives. It's really important to kids. Comedy is a great way to reach kids. Your project should have heart. We want to feel things when we hear a pitch or watch a show. It needs to have an emotional core. It needs to have a soul. Having a kid entry point is really important. Often that a kid entry point means that there needs to be a kind of relatable character that a kid will see themselves in and relate to. And that's kind of why they stick around. So often the kid entry point is a kid protagonist, like Craig is the kind of main entry point of Craig of the Creek because he's the protagonist, but Kelsey and JP are also great entry points as well, being main supporting characters. And so your entry points can be kids or older, adults who are very kid-like. Your show should have a clear story engine. This means that your show has a clear setup that carries on the life of the show. So we should be able to tell from your pitch that your show is not just going to last 1 or 2 episodes. There's going to be an engine that keeps it running. If your show is serialized, that means that, the arc of your show is able to continue for a while. If it's episodic, it means it's able to reset in a way that's kind of interesting every time, and that your show is configured in a way that allows for multiple episodes to exist. And often the story engine is driven, going back to character driven, is driven by your main characters and the situations that they're in, which is often defined by the relationships they have with other people. The last point that is really important is stakes. Stuff needs to happen and we need to care about it. Stakes don't have to mean life or death. Your character can really want a piece of cake, and the stakes have to be really high for them wanting to have a piece of cake. It doesn't mean that if they don't have the piece of cake, they're going to die, but we need to feel, if your character doesn't get that piece of cake, why that is heart-wrenching.
Awesome. And now it's time to pitch your idea. So this is, like we talked about, where you communicate your characters, comedy, and the tone. And you can be creative with how it's presented. You can use the pitch document as a guide to sharing the show idea with us. I think it's really important and helpful to start with a simple premise. There's a lot of power in simplicity, and it really helps us to understand the central idea of your show right away, so we're on the same page from the get-go. The pitch document, which we talked a bit about, and you'll be sharing that with us. And it can be helpful to share the story behind your show too, and your personal connection to it. Why do you want to make this show? Why is your point of view unique? And what do you want to say to kids? And for the style and tone, especially if you're not an artist, it can be helpful to reference shows and artists that you draw inspiration from, or share things with us that will help us to see your vision for what the final product will be. We may have questions along the way or at the end, and be as prepared as you can be, but it's also okay not to have absolutely everything nailed down from the get-go. And we recommend you practice. A pitch is like a presentation, and practicing in front of friends or on your own can really help you communicate clearly. And lastly, have fun. We're all in animation because we love it, and we really want you to succeed. Our job is to find great shows, and we really want yours to be successful. And then also remember that this is a relationship that you're building, and it's not your only shot to pitch a show ever.
Yes, thanks, Megan. And on that note, I think a lot of people have the idea that just to be a strong show creator, as we're going to talk about, you need to have all these hard skills. And the hard skills are important. And by that, I mean, you've got to know something about animation, you've got to have a strong sense of storytelling, but you don't have to have a certain, number of years that you've been working or in a certain position. Because what's actually just as important as having the hard skills is having the soft skills. Because at the end of the day, animation is a super collaborative medium, and none of these shows are made in a vacuum. So we really value creators who have a clear vision. Again, going back to that really strong point of view. So they have a clear vision for their show, but they're really open to other people's feedback and collaborating on their project because they know they can't do it alone. So hopefully everyone already does this in their personal lives, but it's really important that show creators treat everyone equally and with respect. If you have your own show, you're going to be interacting with a lot of different people across the studio, executives, your production crew, studio staff, and it's really important that, again, you treat everyone equally and respectfully because it's a super collaborative medium and no one is better than the other. What creators often learn once they have a greenlit show and start in the position of show running is that it's really a management position. So it's really important that creators are strong and effective managers and communicators. Often these creators will have gone from working on their project with a few people to once they have a greenlit show, all of a sudden they're the boss of 40 or 50 people. And so I think it's really important to keep that in mind that leadership is strong leadership is really, really key to being a strong creator. And, I think a good leader is always really open to learn from the people around you, learn from your crew. Don't be afraid to hire experts in areas in which you're not an expert. If you're a storyboard artist and you have no experience in background design, don't be afraid to hire someone who has a lot of experience in background design, because they're ultimately going to make your show better. But it is important that our show creators do have some industry experience. Animation, again, though it's really collaborative, there are a lot of moving parts involved, and it's important that, our creators have some idea of what those are. And I just want to say, we're talking a lot about the development of projects, and the development of the idea is, of course, really, really central to this project, but it's also, in our development, we develop the creators too. And so, aside from treating everyone equally and with respect, which everyone should already be doing, it's okay if you don't have a ton of management experience, or you don't have a ton of experience getting feedback on your personal projects, because the hope is, being in development will kind of give you that experience, those soft skills that you need to become a strong show creator. And so we just want to wrap up with some advice.
Yeah, so it's helpful to remember that development is relationship based. So it's very helpful to form connections with your peers and to have an online presence and share your work and collaborate.
Yes, and definitely showcase your work where we can find it. I'm actually developing a project with a creator that I found on Instagram and cold emailed. So executives, producers, show creators, other supervisors like art directors are constantly scouring the internet looking for new talent. So definitely make sure that you put yourselves out there, and that involves getting vulnerable, but development does involve a lot of vulnerability, so that people can find you and hire you.
Yeah, and we're always looking for diverse creators with a wide range of styles and experiences. And so are showrunners looking for people to bring onto their shows. So making your contact info easy to find is super important. We are pretty good detectives, but if the info is not out there, we're a bit stuck. So we definitely recommend having business cards at cons and film festivals, or wherever you're sharing your work, or comics festivals. Having a visible email on your website, or if you're not comfortable with that, having some kind of portal where we can fill out a form that will reach you, and then you can choose whether you want to respond or not. Just some way that we can get in touch with you is extremely helpful.
Yeah. Animation development, but animation too is really relationship driven. So definitely find a network of peers. It can be online, it can be in person, but your peers will help you as you seek out industry experience and learning opportunities. As our next point, they will help you, and you guys can hopefully grow together. There are a lot of resources out there, a lot of different animation oriented groups, a lot of different studios and networks that have, jobs and internships posted on their website. Like do a lot of research, do the work to seek out, potential opportunities for you. And also I would say, follow jobs and opportunities that you think will bring you joy, because at the end of the day, this experience should help bring you a lot of happiness. And just seek out things that sound fun to you. And that includes learning opportunities. If you're really interested in character design or storyboarding, look for resources online that can help you learn that.
Yeah, and I think it's really healthy and helpful to remember not to take rejection personally. Development, and animation, like a lot of entertainment, is a business, so there are a lot of unpredictable factors that can affect an executive's decision at any point in time. Executives have passed on projects from experienced showrunners who have created hits before. And development really is a long-term process throughout your whole career. And no one piece of feedback is a value judgment on your work. And if your show is passed on, it can be a valuable learning opportunity and a step in the process towards your goals of creating a show.
Yeah, definitely. We have show creators who, their second development ideas got greenlit, their first ones didn't. So success takes time. And a lot of artists and creators who we work with have been drawing their entire lives. They've been making comics since they were little. They've been drawing since they could hold a pencil. So even if they may seem relatively young, it's something that they've been working at for a really, really long time. So just follow your joy and stay optimistic and focused on your goals. I think that's all we got.
Yeah.
Thank you
guys for listening.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. That was incredibly, so valuable. Thank you so much for sharing all of that knowledge. I hope all of the viewers really enjoyed that. And guess now it's time to move on to our Q&A time. We've been pulling some questions for you guys. So are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
First one we have is there such thing as too much material in a pitch packet? Will it come off as not being open to collaboration with an executive if there's too much?
No, I don't think we're afraid of not being able to collaborate with you, but it's up to you how much time you want to spend on something. I mean, if your pitch isn't strong, if it's not simple, if it's not clear, if your characters aren't engaging, then it really doesn't matter if you come in with a great song, because what we're looking for are the basics, and the basics are the hardest part. And so I would really focus your energy on getting those fundamentals down. And if you feel that, an additional piece of material, like a piece helps convey your tone and point of view, go for it. But most projects that we option off of pitch documents.
Yeah, and we really recognize that getting to a really succinct, clear kind of log line and character descriptions, that takes so much work to get to. So we won't think that you haven't done enough work if that's really clear, because all the editing that we don't see is it shows up in the edited piece.
Very good. If you already have your own concept for a show that's been published online as a webcomic or a YouTube short, will this improve or hurt your chances of it being, picked up by you guys?
It doesn't hurt, definitely. I think the only thing that would be tricky is, if you have a business deal elsewhere, we would just need to figure out that might be complicated, but also not totally prohibitive. Sometimes it's great to build an audience around something, and We Bare Bears came from an online comic. So I think it's great to put your stuff out there.
Yeah, it's also not a guarantee of success. We've also passed on, pre-existing materials that do have a wide fan base just because it wasn't right for us. So it's not a guarantee either way, but it certainly doesn't hurt.
Good to know. Typically, showrunners come from storyboarding backgrounds, at least we've noticed. Have there been showrunners that come from design aspects of the show?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think having some kind of storytelling experience is really important, and design is absolutely storytelling, like 100%. But, it does help to have experience writing, breaking down stories, getting a sense of episode structure and story structure. And so we actually see a lot of designers who come paired with writers to pitch, because then it's a really good balance between kind of art and writing or art and story in the team.
I also always recommend collaboration. You know, if you feel like you're really strong in one area and you happen to either know an artist or a writer that you really like or have a friend that really rounds you out, then, you know, collaborating with somebody on a pitch, it can be really, really valuable. And that's one of the most fun things about animation.
This question, I'm not sure if you guys would have necessarily the answer. It might be a bit more on the legal side, but if a project is picked up, carried forward, and then shelved, do we know, like, how do the rights work? Like, does it go back to the artist? Does it just depend on the situation?
Yeah, that's something that's negotiated in your deal.
Okay. On average, how many images do you think you receive on like a regular weekly basis?
A good question, because there are 4 development executives and we each hear pitches every week. I don't know.
It kind of varies.
We take hundreds of pitches a year. A lot of pitches, you guys.
Wow.
A lot. Yeah.
How long is a project usually in development from start to end?
It really depends. I mean, you're usually looking, I would say, minimum, if it goes all the way to series, you know, minimum a couple of years usually. It can take longer.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to remember too that, you know, an episode, once you have all the development work done and all the assets and the cast and a full crew working, takes, you know, up to 9 months or 11 minutes. So that's, you know, just what the time animation takes, if that sounds long to you.
It's not a quick process.
For sure.
Yeah.
If your pitch gets rejected, can you resubmit the same pitch, but with adjustments based on the feedback you received?
I think it really depends. I mean, we don't typically look at pitches more than once. It kind of depends on what our feedback is on the initial pitch.
We're getting a lot of people asking, are there any big no-nos during a pitch for you guys?
This one's a little tricky because, you know, I guess the biggest no I can think of is, you know, just, or rather advice is just be respectful, you know, and open. But I think the best way to answer that is just, you know, kind of follow the advice that we've laid out. And, you know, that's the best way I think we can answer that question. I don't know about you, Asal.
Yeah, don't do the opposite of what we recommend. I think, like, just keeping the overview of your show in the pitch really tight and clear is important.
Now, how long is the average pitch time? Like, how long do you give people to pitch to you?
The ideal pitch meeting is 30 minutes. You know,
that's
we typically know.
Aside.
Sorry.
Oh, that's usually what we set aside, you know, in terms of a schedule.
Yeah.
You guys go through our questions so fast. We keep trying to keep up. How many rounds of pitches does a project go through before it hits a green light stage?
It's a little less linear than that, I would say. You know, usually after one initial pitch meeting, we decide whether or not to option the project. But in terms of getting it to a green light, you know, a series green light, there are a lot of steps involved from that initial meeting, you know, to a green light. So that one's a little hard to answer.
Yeah, and each, you know, project kind of takes its own journey in terms of some stages take a bit longer than others, but yeah, they're often, you know, we pitch kind of up the ladder to our bosses and their bosses, and that determines a bit, you know, the speed and its trajectory.
Are you open to international pitches?
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Let's see. Can you guys talk a little bit about the shorts program at all, how it goes from development to shorts?
Yeah, so a lot of our shows, kind of the ones I rattled off in the beginning, have gone through the shorts program. And, basically what we'll do is we'll option a project and then develop a 7-minute storyboard with the creator. And then that storyboard will be pitched for shorts consideration. And so if we decide like, hey, the storyboard will make a great short, it's a good test of what the series could look like, could feel like, give some experience to the creator, kind of see how they manage, overseeing a short, then we will greenlight a project to short. So, but yeah, it's all based on a few initial steps, which we call paper development, which kind of culminates in a storyboard.
We're getting a lot of questions of people interested in your jobs. Can you talk a little bit about the path into development, and are there lower level positions that lead into development?
Yeah, usually I think development, it's often a corporate position. So you start usually as an assistant and then a coordinator, and kind of, as you gain experience, take on more responsibility. I started at Cartoon Network as a coordinator and, kind of grew with my responsibility along with the company as more and more shows were greenlit and they, needed more writers. And so I think it often comes from, kind of starting at one of those entry level positions and then taking on more responsibility as is needed. They wanted to know. Sorry, they wanted to know more about what we do.
What is your day to day like?
Sure. So yeah, we take pitches. We meet with artists and writers. I meet with a lot of writers, and we are always scouting, always looking for talent and projects. So that's kind of from everywhere. We're looking online, or looking through Instagram and Tumblrs, and watching things from film festivals, going to cons, going to comics festivals. That part is really fun. We take lots of referrals. If we're working with somebody and they say, hey, I just worked with somebody, or I just saw this thing that's amazing. We meet with them. A general meeting is where it's not a pitch meeting. That's where we would meet with, an artist or potential creator, and they kind of tell us just about them and what they're doing and what they want to do. And we kind of go from there.
Yeah, I have a rather large slate of projects that I oversee, and each one is in a different stage of development. So it's a lot of project management and kind of my brain bouncing from one project to the other throughout the day. And just to answer your question too about experience, Jesse, my path to animation was not super direct. I kind of found myself in it, and I stayed because I really love animation and I really love the people. And my first job in animation out of graduate school was at Pixar as a production assistant, and I think having experience working on a crew has really helped me in this job, because we are not on crews, we are separate from the show teams, but because I've worked on a crew, I have a better understanding of kind of the dynamics of a crew and what goes on, and it's proven really valuable. So I didn't start, a lot of, executives will start out working at talent agencies or as executive assistants, and I eventually did move to LA and become an assistant to a development executive, but that wasn't my first job. And I think that especially now, there's no kind of one way to become a development executive. But I think it is important to know that it's a lot of reading and writing. So you should have strong reading and writing skills. And it's a very social job. So you should like being around people, and you should just be really interested in people, because you get to know them pretty well when you work on their very personal projects with them.
Yeah, and another part of the job that I really enjoy is kind of that being the bridge between the artist and the audience. So it's a lot of, it's definitely creative in terms of us being kind of that first audience and a supporter and cheerleader, and kind of coach to the creators. But it's also a lot of logistics and kind of practical stuff of just managing, getting just the nuts and bolts of getting the show to either producing a short or a series or whatever it is, you know, working with other executives, other departments, and then finding the way that it's going to reach kids. And, you know, sometimes that comes with a bit more kind of like, you know, administrative creativity, I guess, and in finding the way that that idea is going to succeed in the world. So, so yeah, it's got a number of different. It's definitely a lot of juggling, I would say, a lot of different. But yeah, lots of reading and writing and meeting people and meeting amongst ourselves.
Yeah, lots of meetings, lots of multitasking, lots of attention to detail, all important things.
I was going to actually go into, like, are there additional skills that you guys value in executives or potential executives?
A good question.
I think going back to what Asal said about experience, you know, a diversity of experience is really valuable too. Like, I had some weird jobs and before kind of finding my way to animation, and I feel like I learned a lot from just life experience, and animation's an interesting place in that there's a number of artists that become executives, and that can be really a really cool mix to you know, people who have a bit more of a traditional path. So I think yeah, a passion and love for animation and you know, willingness to collaborate is, I find, to be the you know, what makes it the most fun to work with another executive. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I think developing yourself into someone who people want to work with is really important when you're looking for any job, because again, the industry is so relationship based and our work is so relationship based. You know, I'll work with a creator for 3 years and we'll become good friends by the end of it sometimes, you know, because we've done a lot of hard work together, and when you do a lot of hard work with someone, it really bonds you. And again, that's how crews end up really close, because they kind of have this shared experience where they're working really, really hard and putting a lot of their heart and soul into what they're doing. So yeah, I think passion is really important, and just having a good attitude, staying optimistic. The industry's crazy. It's in upheaval. Like, there's always stuff that's changing and going on, and just, you know, having someone that you can kind of laugh at that with is really helpful.
Ain't that the truth? Going back to pitches, a lot of people are asking, do you feel like within the pitch someone needs to tell you guys the entire series plan they have, or should they focus on a season, or should they even just focus on a short?
Again, you got to really nail that 1 to 2 sentence pitch of what the show is. You know, I think, like, even a show as complicated as Game of Thrones, you can boil down into 1 to 2 sentences. And that's the pitch, that's what you kick off your pitch with. You know, you often, creators will leave behind a pitch deck or materials for us to read. So as long as you give us that really clear, succinct overview, you know, we can read all of the details ourselves. And if we have questions, if we want you to expand on stuff, we will ask those questions in the meeting.
Getting some people asking, is singing songs okay if it is a part of the eventual show?
I'll let you take that one as well.
I definitely, I've had a pitch where I've been sung to, and, you know, if the person is a really talented musician and the music's really important to the show, like, sometimes it's helpful. But again, like, what's really important, even if your song is fantastic, if the premise of your show is unclear, it doesn't really matter. So really stick to the basics, and if you feel like you've mastered the basics, then think about adding something else. But do not bring any allergens into your pitch, because that has definitely happened, not to us, but a colleague of ours. So don't bring any substances that your executive could be allergic to. Just if you plan on bringing stuff in.
Oh no. Sad to hear that happened. I'm glad not to you guys. Is there any questions that you guys wish people would ask you? Tricky one.
Really good question.
Yeah.
I think it always leaves an impression when I get the sense that someone coming in to pitch is coming into Cartoon Network specifically. So I think it's helpful to understand, it's helpful for us to know that people coming in kind of know what Cartoon Network is and what we do and what's important to us and what we're looking for. And so I never mind being asked questions that kind of reflect that interest in Cartoon Network. That goes back to the point we were talking about earlier about knowing your audience. Just because it gives us a sense that you really want to be there specifically, because there are a lot of places that you can go, and we want to make sure that you're as excited about working with us as we're as excited about working with you.
Good. Do you have any suggestions on becoming a better pitcher?
I think, practicing is really, really helpful because it is a presentation. I think we're pretty easygoing in that, we're understanding that it's nerve-wracking and it takes a lot of bravery to put yourself out there. So I think we're a pretty warm room, as they would say, and it doesn't need to be, completely rehearsed, but just, making sure that you feel comfortable. I think that doing things like, taking an improv class can be helpful in terms of just helping you feel more comfortable on your feet and making things up as you go. That's, definitely not required by any means, but could be something that people find helpful.
Yeah, I would agree with practice. The executive that you pitch to should not be the first person who's heard your pitch before.
Yeah, and they might have questions that, they might have questions that you hadn't thought about and could, just help you refine it as well.
For clarity, there is, a difference between kind of your pitch deck and your actual pitch Bible, right? Can you guys explain a little bit about what that half of it is?
They're usually the same thing. Sometimes people will pitch a deck that is, maybe just has like a few visuals in it, doesn't have a lot of text, and then we'll follow up with something that has a bit more text. But I think if you keep your pitch succinct, then it can be one document.
Do you feel like a pitch needs to have some art, or do you tend to be okay with completely written pitches?
I think it should have some art. I mean, if you are not an artist, then, include some art that inspires you, that we can kind of use as a reference for how you want the show to look. But animation is a visual medium. And so even if you're not an artist, we want to know that you've thought about how the show looks and feels and moves.
Yeah, and that's also why I always suggest collaboration. If we buy something from a writer, sometimes we will pair them with an artist or write them a list of suggestions for them to check out, and vice versa too, with artists who are looking for help on the writing side. But yeah, for a pitch, the goal is really for us to be able to see your vision and understand really clearly what you want the show to be. And for animation, having some kind of visuals it's really, really helpful. So it's not, we have moved forward with things that were just written, but it was so clear what it would be visually and kind of how it would work. So yeah, definitely recommend art if you can, but no art is better than bad art. We can't unsee it. If we think that's what you mean, then that's what we'll think you mean.
Yeah, and I think just what you were saying, Megan, about us optioning pitches that have no art, often those pitches will come from really experienced animation writers. So we know they have animation experience, just that they're not artists.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it for our Q&A. So we have our final question for both of you. What is the most important piece of advice you'd give an aspiring artist? It can be art related, it can be life related.
Don't shy away from vulnerability. I think lean into it. Art is about being vulnerable and self-expression. And, there will be moments if you develop a show or work on anything in your life that's important to you, where you will feel raw, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think thinking of it as a long-term process. You know, I personally am always trying to learn and grow, and I hope that next year I'll be a better executive. And I think, you know, that's one of the most exciting things about entertainment and animation is you can always be learning more and always be getting better and trying something new. So I think kind of remembering that, you know, your voice is going to continue to evolve and get more specific. And so really just kind of investing in the long-term journey and, you know, remembering that can be helpful and, you know, keep you focused.
Thank you so much to both of you for taking time from your super busy on this panel. I want to quickly thank Jackie and Sally for helping me field questions and run this webinar. As a reminder to everyone watching, for legal reasons, please do not send any unsolicited pitches to our team or our panelists. For future panels and for more information about Cartoon Network Studios recruiting, please check out our website, cartoonnetworkstudios.com, and our Twitter and Instagram pages, which are CNS_recruiting. I want to thank you all again. Thanks everyone watching, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you guys.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for listening.
Get filthy rich on Utrecht. I'm going to 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 get filthy rich on Utrecht. I'm going